Every animal that has ever lived has been alive. Not one of them applied for the position. Not one of them chose the body, the species, the nervous system, the lifespan. As far as we know, anyway. They arrived into existence already running, already breathing, already doing what living things do without any apparent awareness that doing it was remarkable or temporary or even happening at all. The question of whether any of them know this is not a question philosophy has resolved. It is not a question science has resolved. It sits in the space between the two, and the researchers who work closest to it tend to speak carefully, qualify their language, and avoid the word consciousness in conference settings if they can help it. Start with what self-awareness requires. The standard test is the mirror. In 1970, psychologist Gordon Gallup Jr. placed a mirror in front of a chimpanzee and watched what happened. After an initial period of treating the reflection as another animal, the chimpanzee began using the mirror to examine parts of its own body it couldn't otherwise see. It touched a mark Gallup had painted on its forehead while under anesthesia, looking at the mirror, not the hand. It used the reflection as a tool to access information about itself. This is what the test measures. Not whether the animal sees itself, whether the animal understands that what it sees is itself. The list of species that pass the mirror test is short and counterintuitive. Chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, gorillas, inconsistently, dolphins, elephants. A single European magpie, which was the first non-mammal to pass and caused enough scientific controversy that the paper was submitted for review 4 times. The list of species that don't pass is almost everything else. Dogs, which have more documented emotional complexity than most animals on the passing list, reliably fail. They investigate the reflection, lose interest, and move on. Whether this means dogs lack self-awareness or whether the mirror test measures only visual self-recognition and not self-awareness more broadly is a question the field debates seriously. The deeper question is not whether an animal can recognize its own face, it is whether there is something it is like to be that animal. Whether when a crow solves a puzzle, there is a crow in there noticing that it solved it. Whether when a dog lies in a sunbeam with its eyes half closed, something is present that could, if it had the hardware, call that pleasant. In 2012, a group of neuroscientists gathered in Cambridge and signed what became known as the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. The declaration stated, in language that was carefully chosen, that non-human animals possess the neurological substrates that generate consciousness, not that animals are conscious, that they possess the structures that, in humans, produce consciousness. The distinction was deliberate, the implication was loud. The neurological substrates in question include the thalamo-cortical systems in mammals, which appear to generate subjective experience in humans. Birds lack a cortex in the mammalian sense, but have functionally equivalent structures in the pallium. Octopuses developed nervous systems of comparable complexity through a completely independent evolutionary route. The octopus and the human last shared a common ancestor 600 million years ago, one with no neurons to speak of. That 2 lineages arrived at similar complexity through entirely separate paths is something researchers describe as one of the more unsettling findings in animal cognition. In 2018, researchers at Cambridge published a study on bees. Bumblebees were presented with a task, moving a ball to a specific location to receive a food reward. Bees that had watched other bees complete the task learned it faster. So far, unremarkable. What was remarkable was that the observing bees didn't replicate the specific method they had watched. They developed variations. They experimented. One bee consistently used a different ball than the one the demonstrator had used. The researchers called this behavioral flexibility. Others, in less guarded settings, used the word play. Whether what the bees were experiencing during this flexibility is anything at all is something the data cannot reach. The behavior of certain animals in proximity to death is the hardest data to interpret cleanly. Elephants, when a member of their group dies, return to the remains, touch them with their trunks, and stand near them for extended periods, sometimes returning years after the event. A mother elephant in Kenya was observed carrying her dead calf for several days before setting it down. She walked slowly. She did not eat. Whether this is grief in any sense that overlaps with human grief cannot be determined from the outside. What can be said is that the behavior requires the elephant to represent the dead animal as absent in a way distinct from how it represents a living one. To know the calf is gone, the elephant must have known, in some sense, that the calf was here. Ravens have been documented attending what researchers describe as something structurally similar to a wake. When a raven dies, Others gather near the body and go quiet, unusual for a species that is normally among the noisier birds in any environment. Ravens plan for the future, deceive other ravens to protect food caches, and understand the concept of an unseen observer. Whether the gathering involves anything resembling an awareness of mortality is not a question the field will commit to. The philosophical problem at the center of this is what David Chalmers called the hard problem of consciousness. The easy problems, how does the brain process sensory information, how does it integrate data, how does it regulate behavior, are hard in the scientific sense, meaning they require enormous effort to understand, but they are tractable. They yield to investigation. The hard problem is different. Even a complete map of every neuron and every process in a brain does not tell you why any of it produces experience, why there is something it is like to be a thing, rather than nothing. A perfect simulation of a brain, by the logic of the hard problem, might process everything correctly and experience nothing at all. This is the wall every researcher in this field eventually reaches. The behavior of the elephant at the remains of her calf can be described completely. The neural processes can be mapped. The hormonal state can be measured. None of it tells you whether there is something it is like to be her standing there, whether she is present, in the interior sense, to what is happening. The researchers who study animal cognition most carefully tend to arrive at a position that is genuinely uncomfortable to hold. The evidence for rich inner experience in certain non-human animals is strong enough that dismissing it requires more assumption than accepting it. The evidence is not strong enough to confirm what that experience is like or whether the animals in question have any awareness of their own aliveness as a condition. They eat, they sleep, they solve problems, they grieve, they play, they form attachments, and mourn their loss. Whether any of this is accompanied by a self that knows it is doing it remains the question the data keeps circling without landing. Whether something knows it is alive may require, first, that something be able to imagine not being alive, to hold the concept of absence as it applies to oneself. The elephant returning to the bones may be doing exactly this. The raven standing quietly near its dead may be doing exactly this. Or they may be doing something that looks exactly like this from the outside and is something else entirely from wherever they are. We don't have a window into that position. We have behavior and structure and the persistent, uncomfortable suspicion that the line we drew between the kind of thing that experiences and the kind of thing that doesn't was drawn in a place that was convenient for us, not accurate to the world. The animals have not confirmed or denied this. They are busy being alive, with or without knowing it, in exactly the way they always have been.